So what is this I'm sort of talking about at a high level? I think that every data mining problem is a combination of three main factors: the organization, the analyst, and the data. The organizational attributes that come into play are, what are the overall goals of the organization? What are they trying to achieve in this engagement? What are some of the limitations of the organization? What don't they know about? What are they sort of unaware of in the world? And what's kind of the underlying vocabulary or set of entities that they reason about all the time? How do they think about the world, and how do they represent those thoughts? Then within the organization, there's the analyst, and that person or persons has a set of characteristics as well. They have the knowledge that they've gained through practice over the years. They have their own set of individual biases that have to be taken into account. They have certain algorithms they're comfortable with, certain ways of visualizing the results that they're happy with and tend to use over and over. And finally, they have a certain scope of responsibility that may be very limited in terms of what they can do, both in terms of getting data and in terms of making changes in the organization once the results are known. And finally, the data may sit both within the organization and outside of it. It has questionable reliability. It may not cover the space that we really need it for it to cover for the conclusions we want to draw. And its timeliness may be very limited in terms of predicting the future. So all of this, comes together to make the overall picture of what it is you're trying to do with the data. And you really need to be thinking about that every time you go into a new analytic situation and take it into account throughout the analytic process. So this next slide is going to cover 10 years of my life, and as such, it's kind of dense and covers a wide scope of things. But I want to kind of give you, in as succinct a way as possible, sort of a summary of what I've experienced over the past 10 years that's led me gradually to this kind of approach and this kind of way of looking at things, just so you get a better understanding of where I'm coming from. So the first thing that I did, one of the earliest exploratory projects was called the IBM Jam. I'm sure that means almost nothing to all of you, but it's a special event that IBM holds approximately every year. Sometimes a little more time goes by, sometimes less, where we get the entire company together as one big group, and we talk about something for 3 days. Sounds pretty weird, but of course we're doing our work too. We don't just talk for 3 days, but it's basically one long discussion that takes place on the internal web about one particular topic that there's a big important decision coming up. One of the ones we did recently was $100 million needed to be invested in new innovations and new technologies. Where should we invest it? That was called Innovation Jam. Another one, which is one of the first ones I did, was called Values Jam. And it was actually, the time had come, we decided, when the world had changed and the company had changed enough, we needed to look at our values as a company and see if we needed to change those at all and really redefine them. And they wanted, instead of having the president say, here are our values, go forth and do it, let's bubble it up. Let's have the company as a whole kind of participate in the process and see, what we think our values ought to be. So how did I get involved in that? Basically, my experience in the past had been in doing text mining for IBM problem tickets. As you probably know, IBM does a lot of help desk, and problem tickets are collected for all those help desks. And I had gotten kind of a reputation as someone who could really mine those problem tickets and come up with really good, succinct summaries of what people were saying on these help desk calls. So they thought, hey, could you help us with this problem? We're going to have all these people talking to us and recording their comments on a website, but during that jam, we'd like to be able to tell them what everyone's saying, summarize for us what the conversation is about. Otherwise, people will come into this jam and all they'll have is this list of thousands of comments. They won't be able to really participate as a discussion. It'll just be kind of random thoughts of 10,000 people. So I thought, well, okay, I can do that. So I went into kind of the jam room, and all these comments were coming in, and I was running my software. And what I was used to doing is sort of spending like a day with the data, kind of doing lots of different clusterings and looking at all the individual clusters and coming up with what those clusters meant and describing that. Here, they wanted me to do a report every hour on all this data, come up with a new summary of what were the changes, how is the conversation evolving. So I did this for 3 days straight, almost 24/7. By the end of it, I was a total wreck. And I realized I really needed to rethink my whole process of how I was doing this and come up with much more automatic ways to do it without really having to read so much content. And so that was, in a way, kind of the birth of a lot of the techniques I developed came out of that really hard experience. And eventually, by the time we were doing these last set of jams here, even though the jams were getting bigger and more people were getting involved and more data was coming in all the time, it was actually much, much easier for me to do it and eventually for other people to actually do that role of actually analyzing the jam and coming up with the top themes that were being discussed over time.
So did you start with the values jam, and what were the values that came out of that?
Yes, there were 3 values, and hopefully I can remember them. First is innovation for ourselves and for the world. And I thought that was a really good one because it kind of captured the spirit of all the comments that talked about how important it was to innovate, but not just for making money, but also to innovate to really change the world in a positive way. And I think that particular one really captured a lot of the comments around that. Let's see if I have. I wrote it down. Dedication to every client's success, and that really captured a lot of the ones that talked about the client and how important and critical it was to IBM in the past to be a company really focused on helping the client to succeed, not just on making money off the client. And so innovation, and what was the last one? Trust and personal responsibility in all relationships. This captured a lot of different ideas that came in about letting the individual have a level of control over their job that was commensurate with the responsibility they took towards doing that job. It wasn't that everyone just do their own thing, but everyone do the thing that is just the right level towards the amount of responsibility they have, and keeping that trust so that you're not constantly looking over to everyone's shoulder. Everyone's being tied down with lots of bureaucracy and restrictions on their job. So I do think I've done a lot over the years, a lot of different analyses. That's one of my favorites, and certainly to have been a part of the analytics that eventually defined the values for an entire company that still exists today was something that was very gratifying. I've already seen a little preview of the rest of the slide, but going on now. The next area was a system we did called Business Insights Workbench. It was to take the straightforward text mining we'd done in Help Desk and in the jams and really apply it in a more general tool that could take data from anywhere in the organization, not just text, but structure, text, anything in a data warehouse basically, and apply these exploratory analytic techniques to it. And we came up with 3 basic stages, which we called explore, understand, and analyze. And that was really kind of the birth of this idea of a general process for doing exploratory analytics. The explore phase was giving you all sorts of tools that would let you do search and query and set operations to create that universe of data that I talked about that's relevant to the problem you're trying to solve. The understand phase was doing clustering and classification, visualization, statistics to help you understand exactly what that data had in it so you could better make decisions about it. And then the analyze phase was to take what you did from understanding the classes that you created via clustering and taxonomy generation and look for the connections, the underlying statistics that would tell you there's something going on between these two you didn't know about before, and then understand that connection through looking at examples and so on. So that basic process really turned out to be, it really was a workbench in the sense that you could go to almost any data, plug the software in, work with it for a few hours, and get some insight into really what was going on underneath the covers with that data. It was a very flexible tool. We handled hundreds of different kinds of problems and hundreds of different domains with it. By the end of the day, there was really only about 3 or 4 people who used it. It was that kind of tool that was so powerful and so flexible, it was almost impossible to train people to do it. And if you didn't do it like every day, at least every week, to spend some time with it, you quickly forgot how to use it and really weren't able to, make it scale to lots and lots of people doing it lots and lots of ways. So it was both a great success and a total failure. The next big project was Cobra, and that's the one I'm going to talk about mostly today. This is a tool for doing social media analytics on the web, and I won't tell you much more about it because I am going to spend most of the rest of the talk on it. And the final tool we worked on was simple. This is a tool for analyzing patent and research data in particular. It's a complete warehouse of all this information about technical innovation that you can both search and do analytics on. And we found this to be kind of like taking BIW here, boiling it down to a set of very simple processes and letting the ordinary business user, the ordinary searcher, people who are really doing stuff with this data on a daily basis, have the power to do what I was doing with the more complicated tools. So basically, to kind of give you a feel for these projects, we kind of have been increasing our business impact over time with each of these as years have gone by. And Simple is really a very recent project, so its numbers aren't up to the level yet of Cobra, but we think it's going to go way beyond Cobra eventually. And our total impact, we had this calculated just very recently as 124 million for all these projects together. And that allowed us to win an IBM, what's called outstanding accomplishment. Anything more than 100 million in a research project is considered to reach that level of outstanding. There's even a level above that where you reach 1 billion. We're not up to that level yet, but I think we might make it someday.